And I think that's perfect. That's a great starting point. So I guess overall, more so we're discussing Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. God,
Yep.
I'm totally spacing on the full name. Mr. Morale and the Big
No.
Steppers. And we'll discuss that and we'll get into the nitty gritty of it. But also too, a big portion of what makes that album so cool and so great is the song sequencing and the story as it unfolds and that deliberate path that Kendrick took.
Yep.
Yeah, so go for it, man. Take us away. Oh, so by the way, this is Gabe. Gabe's been on once before, so he's another return guest here on Conversations with the Community. Happy to have you back, Gabe. It's cool because, the first time we chatted, I don't know, we just kind of crossed paths, and then ever since then, now you're like a mod on the Discord server for me, and you've been a great part of the community. We chat almost every day online, which is really cool. So it's fun to have you back and talk to you again, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been nice giving you some of my hard-earned cash every month. It's been so worth it. Like I mean it. Like I had only two Patreons signed up. You and Turning the Tables,
Yeah.
and like it's kind of I don't know. It's like when I see that little paycheck mark hit my bank account, I just kind of feel like I'm contributing to something great, and not only just your channel, but like the community and everything. And it's been awesome just being there and seeing so many genuine hip hop conversations, rock conversations, just music conversation in general. And for the longest time, I always wanted a place where I could do that because sadly, many, if not most, of my friends don't really listen to music. They listen to music, but they listen to it in playlists. They listen to it as a background stuff. They don't sit down
Right.
and experience music. And finding a community of people that does do that to me was like one of the high points of the past few months.
Well, that's so awesome to hear. I really appreciate that first of all, and then but yeah, I totally agree. Like, what's cool is I've heard that from so many other people of it's just so nice to have other people to talk to about music and have these in-depth conversations, or maybe every now and then it's funny on Discord people kind of tear off into these little arguments, and they're always pretty respectful, they're always pretty good, but you can tell like, no, this guy's better or that song's better, like, no, this one's way better, and people just
For
get into
nearly
it.
6 months, with only one band so far. So yeah, I think it's been a success.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's right. There's just that one guy that you had to kick out, and he was begging for it anyway, so no big deal there. Well, I appreciate it, man. That's very kind words. I've loved it too. It's been a lot of fun, especially kind of at the 1 year anniversary right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's jump in. Let's jump into Miss Morale and the Big Steppers and take it away, man. I know you've got a lot that you want to get out there.
Alrighty, so on my other screen here, I have the track listing for the album pulled up, so we can go uh overall at first, and then track by track as we progress
Okay.
and see how we feel about it. So let me just pull it up right
Yeah, I'm
here.
doing the same thing. I'm pulling up. It's been a little while since I've listened to it. This is one thing that has been interesting for me is I really like spending a week with an album and really getting to get into it and hear it and get familiar with it. But in that, because I have such an intense relationship with one album each week and then I move on, as the weeks go by, I forget what I listened to 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and it's really kind of strange. It's a strange experience.
Yeah, that happens, but also the thing about that is that like because you have such an intense relationship with it, you get to really get into it, the nitty gritty, the how it makes you feel, and how you react to it, and then when you come back to it later, you have such an interesting connection to it already that your next few listening experiences get to be like kind of like seeing an old friend,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
meeting something you've not seen for a while, but it's just like you've never like stopped talking, and it's like it was just yesterday you were listening to it. And I think that kind of intensity also helps you being so like so interesting to watch. Not only your reactions, but your additional thoughts and how your relationship with music in general just evolves slowly.
It has been slowly evolving. Yeah, as I step back, especially lately, because I hitting the 1 year mark, I step back and think about where I was, and Tyler days, and then doing singles and getting into albums, and then like I still remember hearing Blonde for the first time and just going, "Holy shit! Like this isn't
There's
rap, you know? Like this is crazy." And then Whole Lot of Red being really, really hard for me to adjust to and take in, and just yeah, it's been a crazy experience, but it has been really fun in that sense of hearing all these new things. And just I still remember the Tupac album, and my mind on Tupac just being completely reversed, total 180 on everything I used to think about that guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and in a sense, this is kind of what Kendrick did with this album, because he had been 5 years with no solo project of his own. He had the Black Panther soundtrack, which is nice, but it's a collab album with all of TDE and a lot of big names, and he's just the director. He's in a lot of songs, but they're not like Kendrick Lamar songs
right.
exactly. They're good, but they're not like what he does. They don't have his standard for solo production and solo writing and lyrics and stuff. They're just like really nice songs that fit into the mood of the movie. But like after Damn, people really did not know where he would go next, because he had basically ticked every box you can tick as a rapper. He
Right.
went from a small independent regional name to big international name with Good Kid, Mad City. He had the bangers, he had the parties, the bops, the radio hits, and then he went completely left field with T-Pab and did a jazz record with funk and soul and almost some rock vibes in some tracks, and something completely different from what people were expecting out of him. And then he went left field again, or
Yeah.
he did a U-turn from left and went right, and he did Damn. It was very contemporary hip hop, very pop inspired, very trap inspired, believe it or not.
I
And
agree
he
with
was
that.
feeling that too. And like he was at a point where not only was he very universally acclaimed, he had also won prizes that nobody won before, like a Pulitzer
Yeah.
uh, for music is like still to this day unmatched in the history of music and especially hip hop. And to see him achieve all that without selling out, without going like the easy way, without crushing his lyricism or his depth, that just gave everyone hope that maybe the music industry would learn the lesson. And then he goes away for 5 years, and we reverse back to like he never existed. And if you look at the releases that we had in that period in hip hop, with very few exceptions, a lot of what began to pop off and make big waves in the industry was exactly the type of stuff that Kendrick was trying to change, trying to combat in his music. And like you can see that there is a shift from that absent spirit of his, where a lot more melodic stuff began to make big waves. You got a lot more of mumble rap becoming more mainstream than it already was, and taking over lyricism and stuff. And that's not necessarily bad, but what, in my eyes at least, in my opinion, was kind of bad from that was that I don't know, we kind of lost that little touch that we had, where we kept a certain balance. There was the stuff you had to for parties, you had the banger stuff, the drugs, beaches and drinks and money
Yeah,
and
sure.
everything else, and you had that lyrical stuff that was heavy, that was personal, that was emotional, that was inspired. And Kendrick had that brought up to the front, And after he went away for a while, after like 2 or 3 years after them dropped, that began to slowly fade back into the back end of music. And now, and you get like obviously the outliers. You get people like Kanye West that always remained personal in his records and always went a completely different way than other people wanted him to. You have people like RTJ that dropped a amazing, fantastic album in 2020 that was after Kendrick was already kind of vanished. But like he had that touch and he made the industry try to be better, and then he went away to take care of himself, and you can clearly see that people were kind of getting used to not having that pressure of like, oh, there is a man that can make hits but also like educate everyone. And so when he announced that he was coming back and he began to drop little hints, everyone was putting their eye out to see, oh, is he gonna drop another T-Pad? Is he gonna drop another good Kid Mad City? What is he gonna do this time? No one knew because he had gone every lane and he was already unpredictable. Even in not releasing anything for 5 years, he already had broken the mode of what the industry expects. Most people, if they don't release it for 2 or 3 years, they begin to fade into irrelevance. But Kendrick never left the conversation at all, even in his silence. And so we got the melodic blue stuff from Baby Ken, and everyone was like, "Okay, so when is his record coming?" But the thing is, in Baby Kim's project, he was not in serious mode at all. He was just having fun. When you eventually get to that, and I think you're gonna enjoy it very much. It's it's just him and his cousin having a lot of fun, and you can really tell that he was just very lighthearted in that record. He was just trying to make good verses, good wordplay, quotables, and etc. etc. He was not trying to build a story or to make
Yeah.
any deep statements. So we got new Kendrick Lamar stuff, but we were still starving for that deep stuff that we know he was able to do.
You know,
So when
with his cousin though, that kind of experience for him, that's got to be so freeing for a guy like Kendrick. You know, for a guy who will be so meticulous and so thorough and so detailed in weaving an album story that crosses 2 discs, 2 volumes. For him to just get with his cousin and just make some songs, that's just got to be an amazing experience for him. I assume. Maybe I'm just way off base on that, but I feel like all the weight that he puts on himself, he can just like set it to the side and just go have fun.
Yeah. If you take Mr. Morale as a like how can I say, a blueprint of his time away from the music industry, you can tell that that disc was somewhere in the middle of volume 2 when he had already began to take big steps towards accepting himself and accepting just him for him and doing what he wanted to do and not trying to live up to the expectations of being a prophet and being a leader and being the symbol of like the black community's struggle, and then the music industry as an enemy, and Uncle Sam and all of those things that he talks about in every other record he does. So like he was already somewhere in that space mentally, and I think that only evolved as 2020 went on,
Yeah.
because you have some very recent references in the album. Some things that happened like late October last year are in here, like Drake and Kanye getting back. He talks about that in one of the tracks.
Yeah.
So you can know that the album, although it is so well built, it was also evolving as he evolved. It was shifting with him to be a mirror of his own life experience, a snapshot of that moment where he went from like I don't know, taking such a toll on himself and carrying such a weight to realizing that he is not your savior. And that journey is so well documented in this album. The 2 disc thing is like perfectly constructed to give you that clear divide. There is a snapping point, a point where there is a clear change in perspective, and the picture kind of shifts to where he is right now, to
Yeah.
not being a savior, not being a hero, not being a prophet, just being Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
And there's snippets of that in every single project he does, but they were never so densely and so straightforwardly put together like this. And that's, to me, the beauty of this project. It's like, it's so personal. Like, You is personal. You is a personal song. He cried
Oh,
during
yeah.
the recording of that song. You can tell that the pain that he feels there is real. But You is like not nearly as personal as him just coming forward and saying, I cheated on my wife.
Right. Well, and it's really
Uh,
interesting because you get into Mother I Sober, and in that song he says you don't really feel it until you're sober.
yeah.
And so
And
when
he
you take that
was
concept and put it to You, where he's clearly just wasted drunk, and he's expressing all these emotions, but that's him telling us, I wasn't feeling the emotions then because I wasn't sober.
yeah. So like I watched a lot of videos, reviews, reactions, analysis stuff for this album because I wanted to really get into it. So like one of the videos I watched was Professor Sky's
Yeah,
record review,
I watched that one
and
too. Yeah,
there he goes about how therapy, the structure of therapy and dealing with trauma and accepting it. The first step is to take responsibility, and he does that in this album. He takes the blame and the responsibility for the trauma that he carried, and he accepts that it is his duty to deal with it in a way that doesn't hurt others, and that's what he's doing. He's changing the picture and going from pointing fingers like he was in them, like you suck and you do this and you do that, to I was wrong. I did this, I did that, and I need to change. And he that is like an amazing construction that he does from the very first track. So getting into the track list more specifically, the very first track, and to me one of the best openers I've heard in recent memory in any album, because it really does that job of setting up the tone,
it
the
does.
mood, the goal of the
Yeah,
album. It's like a thesis statement. So when you write your thesis, you have the abstract that goes, in this work we're gonna do this, this, and that, and analyze this, and that through these and that means, with the end of achieving this and that goal. So that's what he's doing here. He's stating what the purpose of this album is and how it's gonna go. And so he does that obviously with lyrics, but also with the production of the sound of the record. So like, uh, you have that intro, right? I hope you find some peace of mind in
yeah,
this life,
yeah.
and I hope you find some paradise. And then you have the woman. I don't know if it's his wife or if it's the
Tell them,
actress he
tell
married,
them that you're. Yeah,
telling, just saying, tell him your truth.
yeah. Well,
Because
I don't know.
no,
That part is really interesting to me because she says, tell them that you're, and it cuts her off because there are so many things that he tells us throughout the album. And I feel like the cutting off of what she was going to say is perfect because it leaves it open ended in that there are so many things that he has to tell us that if she
yeah,
said what, then it would ruin the whole experience right there.
yeah, but also you can take it as she was gonna say, tell them your truth, but instead of just saying the word truth, the rest of the album is his truth. So he changes the word for the rest of the project.
Yeah.
That's just telling his truth, or maybe at least the rest of the track. I don't know if it extends exactly to the whole album because there are perspectives from different people in there. But this track is his truth.
Yeah.
And he starts by saying, I've been going through something,
Yeah.
be afraid. And that is very ominous, but also a very open line that just states, I've been having issues, and I'm gonna talk about them, and
Yeah,
he does.
and I want to cut in line here a little bit before I forget, because in track 3 of Worldwide Stammers, there's that section where he's talking about, the first time I fucked a white bitch and this and that and blah blah blah, and he felt like when he was doing it, he was extracting revenge for all his ancestors because they were watching or whatever. And his wife asked, do you have a problem? And he said, yeah, I might be racist. And that line to me is so critical, because I think that line is a lie, because he's not racist. He's a sex addict. But if he says he's racist, that's an easier thing to accept. And so she won't bug him about it. And so he can continue to be a sex addict. Like, he uses a lie to hide the truth, because later on at the end, he basically comes out and says, yeah, I'm a sex addict.
As a black man, if you say you're racist, it's less of a, oh my god, what? Than if you're a white guy and you say, yeah, I might be racist. Because as a black man, the thing is, as a black man, you say you're racist, people will either think you're joking or you're being ironic, or it's like just it's kind of like a revenge thing, right? Yeah, I'm racist against white people as a revenge because they are racist against me.
Yeah,
so it's easy.
That's kind of the point, right?
Lie.
It's something that she'll believe, so she won't bug him more about what's actually going on. It's a way to cover over the truth.
Yep, and I think that reveals the progression. It's like the little nuggets of him at the start of the album being like wearing a mask, and that's where he goes into with N95.
Yeah,
he's wearing a mask, and the rest of the album is that mask slowly coming off, and by the end of Purple Hearts, the mask is just shattered on the ground, and he is stomping on it. And record 2 is just the whole, like, the whole truth with no interruptions, no sleight of hand, no attempt to make it sound better or sound less harsh. He just goes in.
Yeah.
But the first album, the first record, is him trying to tell the truth without really telling the truth.
Yeah.
The thing I noticed about that is I've been going to therapy like every week. Every Friday, I have 1 hour of therapy with this therapist I know. She's a great professional. She's amazing, and our sessions are awesome. And I really recommend that everyone does that. Like, everyone should have therapy, no matter if you think you need it or not. It's just a great thing to do sometimes, to just like have a place where you can just dump a lot of random thoughts and a lot of your things that have been going on that you sometimes don't even notice. So, like, going to therapy, I realized that sometimes when I try to like say something, at first I try to say it in a way that makes me look less bad.
Yeah.
Then, as the therapist gets into it and asks more and probes me, I just open up and begin to really giving her the truth. It's like, oh yeah, this kind of thing is going on, and then yeah, but have you done this and have you done that? And I go, yeah, no, I haven't, and then we build towards the full picture. But at the beginning, it's hard to just come forward and say, no, I am a sex addict. I have a drug problem. I am this. I am that. It's kind of like you're trying not to hurt as much, because when you tell the truth, it hurts.
Yeah.
Because you're extracting poison from yourself, and that process is hurtful. But it needs to hurt, because pain is nothing more than the body telling you what's wrong so that you can treat it. So when you feel pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, or physical pain, your body, your soul, your mind is just telling you, hey, there is something wrong and you need to treat it. You need to deal with this thing. Because if you let it go, or if you try to hide it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, to the point where it won't be able to be fixed anymore. So pain, we have this kind of cat and dog relationship with it, where we try to silence it, avoid it, run from it. But in the end, we should embrace pain as a wonderful mechanism that avoids, that makes us avoid getting hurt, but also makes us know when we did, so that we can face our pain, face our what's wrong with us, and try to get better. But what has become the norm because of our survival instincts and because of our need to avoid pain because it's bad, it hurts, it makes me feel not good. Because of that, we kind of developed ways to silence pain without having to deal with what the pain is indicating. Because we treat the pain as the problem and not as a symptom of a
Right.
deeper problem.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So I read a statistic about painkillers in the US, and you guys are like really taking that shit.
There are
You take
so much
nothing.
medications floating around in the United States. It's kind of disgusting, honestly. And then even if you don't look at like official medications, you know, if you look at people who self-medicate
Drink.
some kind of
Yeah.
extents, right? Yeah, there it's just all over the place, all over the place.
Yeah, and he talks about that in the hard part, part 5, where he goes,
Yeah,
"Drink the way we ain't sober,"
yeah. And then we forget the next day. That's the problem. That's the culture.
because we consume these things to avoid pain, and so we avoid the reminder that there is something wrong. And if we don't realize there is something wrong, if we don't embrace that pain, we are never gonna get to treating it. We're never gonna get to a point where we go, okay, let me sit down and see what's wrong and try to make it better, try to make it right.
Yeah.
And it's hurt a lot because you're gonna realize there is a lot wrong with you, and you're gonna realize the step, the way to get better is very long and very arduous. But if you don't take the first step of embracing pain, you're never gonna get there. So you need to take the first step. You need to be honest. You need to tell them your truth. And
Well,
that's what he is doing here.
and I think a lot of it too is a fear of pain. You were talking about pain. It just reminded me of a story last fall. My son, he was helping my wife out in the backyard, and he had the hedge trimmers, and he did something, and he nicked his knee with the hedge trimmers and took a chunk out of his knee, pretty good chunk. So we had to take him to the
Damn.
hospital, you know, the clinic, and he had to get stitches. And when he found out he had to get stitches because he'd never had it before, he kind of like almost had like a panic attack, you know. He knew it was going to hurt a lot, and he didn't want to do it, and all this other stuff. And I told him, dude, look, first of all, okay, yeah, it's going to hurt. It will hurt, but right now, the fear is a bigger problem for you than the actual pain. The actual pain is only going to last about 2 minutes. Like when they give you the shots, the numbing shots where they're going to do the stitches, that's going to hurt, it's going to sting, and then that's it. It's over. Like it's 2 minutes of pain and then you're done. Right now though, this anxiety, this buildup, this anticipation, this fear that's swarming your mind as you're waiting for the doctor to come back in and do all this stuff, that is so much worse than the actual pain that you're going to go through. And I feel like there's some parallels there with like emotional pain, psychological pain, where people build up in their mind this idea of, if I admit this, if I say this out loud, it's gonna unleash this whole thing. There's gonna all this drama and all this commotion in my life, and it's gonna ruin everything. But really, what they're focusing on is a fear and not the actual process itself.
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's why he says be afraid. It's
Yeah.
not just telling people to be afraid because he's gonna spill a tea and like go on rappers and point fingers. It's be afraid because there is a lot of pain to be had, and you need to tread cautiously, but also you need to get there somehow. So be afraid, but don't let that fear overtake you. Tell them your truth.
Yeah.
And so, going through something, going through that pain and that process of dealing with that pain is a pretty powerful theme to explore, especially in an album as long as this one, that really goes everywhere. Like, he even deals with things that most people would never admit. Like, everyone has done embarrassing, shameful things in their past. but they didn't write a song about it, especially not if they were involving homophobic slurs and misgendering and how ignorant you were. So being ignorant is kind of shameful, but at the same time, if you don't admit to being ignorant, you're gonna stay ignorant. And so like one of the things that you said when you were gonna react to that album, and I really liked that, was when you said, "I don't know everything, and I don't have to know everything. I need to let myself learn and grow. So I'm gonna listen to it. I'm gonna get shit wrong, but that's all right because
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn from being wrong, and then I'm gonna be right later." So like that mindset of learning from your mistakes, that's the the mindset that you need to have to deal with life, to deal with healing, to deal with processing pain. You need to learn from those mistakes, and you need to not be afraid to be wrong, not be afraid to be mistaken, to be ignorant, and to admit that you're ignorant and that you're wrong, and be a better person after. So that's like the entire arc that he has to go through. So first he has to take off these masks. So in N95 he goes on about taking off cloud, taking
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
brands, taking off money, taking off everything, and you can tell that despite that song being structured as a diss to every other rapper, he's clearly talking about himself. Because in the very next track, and in the track before that, he says that he deals with grief and pain by buying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He just admits it in United in Grief. I grieve different. I bought a chain, bought mansions, got 20 millions in tax, got new cars, new this, new that,
Yeah.
and
It was all up
the new
front. It was all for rap.
yeah, it was all for rap. And he says, I grieve different. I grieve different. I buy stuff. I waste money because I'm dealing with pain. And then by the end of the song, he goes, everybody grieves different.
Yeah.
Because not only everybody does the same kind of thing that he does to try and drown their pain, but everyone has a different coping mechanism. And for some, it is braggadocio rap. It is chains. It is drugs. It is the kind of stuff that you see that you look and go, ah, that's superficial. That's fake. But like maybe he is trying to be fake to hide something, to hide a pain. Maybe he was abused as a child. Maybe he had a such a rough upbringing and such a deep rooted daddy issues that he didn't know better than to be fake, than to put up a front and put up these masks. And so what Kendrick is trying to do is sacrificing himself and his image in the public eye to give other rappers and other artists a chance to heal themselves. Because if him, who had the image of the GOAT, the king of hip hop, the king of the East and West Coast, King Kendrick, the prophet, the symbol of peace that will unite every nation, black and white people together, and he goes and just admits to being very flawed and very imperfect and very vulnerable and ignorant and maybe even sometimes even despicable in the things that he feels and does. He admits to that just so that people can go and look, if Kendrick did that, then I can do that too. And
Yeah.
and then comes in Kodak Black at the start of track 3, going like Kodak Black, Eckhart Tolle, and this is the Big Steppers. And Kodak Black being so prominent in this album is to me the proof that this is Kendrick's point. He is trying to show that people do make mistakes, people do carry pain, and then they hurt others because of that pain. Hurt people hurting more people. That's the
Yep.
culture.
Yep. Yep. That's it. And two, it goes so well with the theme of, Jesus and public sacrifice and dying for the other people and all that kind of thing, because it's one thing to take It's one thing to approach your own issues and admit to them, either on your own or to a therapist, and to slowly work through that. It's something else entirely to be one of the most famous rappers on the planet and do it on an album that everyone is going to listen to. Like, there is
it's
no more public sacrifice than that.
yeah, it's one thing to go like to your family, hey, I have issues, I have this and that.
Right.
The other completely different thing to go to the entire world, your fans, people that idolize you, and go, hey, stop. Let's rethink this, and let's think about this in a different perspective, because I am not the person that you think that I am.
Yeah. So before you jump off of that, because that's a great point. I'm just going to ask this question to you, just hypothetical. How well do you think it's going to work? Like, do you think, because right now, the dust hasn't even settled on the album, right? It's been like what, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
We won't
Two and a half.
We won't really know the impact this album has until a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So, what do you think people will take from this? Hip hop artists, fans, whatever. How do you think this changes the course of hip hop going forward?
So that's a very interesting question. First off, it's really hard to predict how effective this will be, how really well it will be taken, because the initial reaction to the album was very mixed. There were people saying, "Oh, Kendrick missed with this one. It's not as good. It doesn't have any bangers and whatever." Obviously, there's always going to be the detractors, but this reaction has been the most mixed Kendrick ever got, because even though some people don't like them as much as the other projects, the reception to them was pretty damn positive, if I do say so myself. And this one really divided people, but a trend that you can see very clearly is that people that give the album a chance and spend more time with it, and let it mature in their minds, usually end up appreciating it way more than people that just listen to it the one time, the two time, didn't really get into it, and then moved on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So what I can tell is that this album is definitely not as immediate as his other projects. It's not as front-loaded with something to grasp. It is very personal and very specific in the way it is crafted, and it's definitely not for everyone. But for everyone that does give it a chance, it is basically unmatched in so far in music, with how personal but also how relatable it feels. Because Kendrick is talking about things that he exclusively has gone through, because he is in a position very few people are in. But also, by being so human, he's talking about things that everyone has gone through, in a way. And because everyone is human and everyone goes through pain and sorrow and loss and grief and denial and guilt and ignorance and vices, everyone goes through those things. It becomes easier to relate to him as a human and as a fellow person who is going through this stuff with us than it is if you listen to something like To Pimp a Butterfly or Good Kid, Mad City. Because those albums, as personal as they are not as universal. They are trying to build a specific image, trying to pass a specific message, and this is just Kendrick going, all right, you want to know where I've been, what I've been doing? Here it is.
Yeah.
And here, doing this.
And that's a great point, because Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly specifically, while those are excellent albums and they're very specific, you are right in the sense they are specific to him. Most of us don't know what it's like to be a good kid in a mad city. Most of us don't know what it's like to be someone who's exploited by the music industry and the government for all the money they make off of the art that they produce. We can't have that experience. And so in that sense, yeah, those are very personal to him. But you're absolutely right in that this is him saying, no, I'm just a person with flaws and problems and addictions and lies and masks and all these other things that we all have. And so
Yep.
here's what I'm doing. And yeah, the fact that he puts it all out there like that is incredible. It really is incredible. I don't think I've ever heard, I mean, off the top of my head right now, I really honestly can't recall an artist just bearing so much in an album like that.
Yeah, he is. He's so open and so vulnerable. I really like. I feel bad at times for how exposed he is after this, because like it's one thing to have a scandal. Oh, Kendrick Lamar cheated on his wife,
Right.
and it's another thing to go, hey, I cheated on my wife and like really bad, and I hurt her, and now she stuck with me despite that, and now I'm getting into therapy because she knew I had issues. It's like when you get to that level of like just openness and vulnerability. Hey, when I was a kid, I used to be kind of homophobic, but everyone is. But then my cousin and my aunt became they transitioned and they got into this whole new world and they opened up this door for me. And now I feel like I have to come forward and say, this is not how it should be, and we need to change. So like Kendrick Lamar basically was the first mainstream, big, legendary-sized rapper to go trans rights are human rights, but he didn't even say the phrase, because if he just said that, it would be
Right.
corny, it would be kind of forced, and it wouldn't work, wouldn't reach the audience that he's trying to reach. But by going the route that he went, he managed to represent that population in his music. He managed to pass a message of growing, of understanding each other, of loving each other, loving thy neighbor. But also, he managed to put it in such a way that people that don't usually take that seriously were able to go like, hold on, let me think about this. And I say that why? Because I myself, like, I've never been homophobic or transphobic, but I was ignorant about how they struggled, or how hard life really was for those people. And that song just shook me on first listen, and I was like, okay, let me rethink my position and let me inform myself. And so I was one of the people that he was trying to reach.
Yep.
People that just didn't know better. And then there are people that know better but don't do better. And they know that the F slur is not something that they should use lightly. And they still use it anyway. And so he uses that as a tool to go like, hey, you like that word? Okay, let me say it many times to see if you find it funny. Now listen to the story I have to tell and see what you think of it. And that shock value, not for the shock value, but like that hooker, that punch
Yes.
right in your face is used to like make you pay attention to the story.
Well, and I think he basically he created controversy kind of on purpose for the fact of putting a spotlight on what he was talking about. Whereas if he had not done that, if he had used proper terminology and non-offensive language, then it would have just kind of everyone would have glazed over the song. It wouldn't have been offensive. It wouldn't have been controversial. Nobody would have zoomed in on it and torn it apart and been, some people are upset with it. Some people are like, no, this is really important. That wouldn't have created that discussion that needed to be created to make people pause and sit on that song and soak in it for a while. And,
And
I had a very similar experience like you did, not understanding the slur. And for me, it was great to listen to Kevin from Turning the Tables and have him talk about his brother and what his brother went through, and having it made personal and emotional, that word and what it meant to somebody's brother, somebody who, I care for. I think Kevin's a great dude. We talk. He's a good person. to think about somebody using that towards his brother and him seeing his brother treated in a certain way, it totally changed my whole perspective on it.
Yeah. And that's the thing that he does a lot on this album, is taking something that he knew was going to cause discussion. Like Kodak Black, he was accused, not convicted, of raping a girl. The song We Cried Together.
Yeah.
He trying to represent toxic relationships. If they just went bar for bar and like he just called another female rapper and just went traded verses, it would be one thing. But he acted out a scene that not only is common but very widespread. But he did it in such a way that was so uncomfortable and so unbearably real that like you can't turn away from it. Because I don't like listening to that song.
I don't listen
when
to it. Yeah.
comes on, I don't skip it because I need to subject myself to that and see that this is the reality that we are in, and we need to face it. We need to stop tap dancing around the conversation. This is how the word sounds. Is the first phrase that is said in the song.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how the word sounds. Because not only in relationships, if you apply that to politics, countries stepping on other countries, people trying to kill other people for resources, for money, for land. Like, where are we? Are we back in the 1500s, the 1800s? Have we not learned anything? Have we not evolved as a society to know that we shouldn't do that? We shouldn't just tap on each other? And what gain do we have from this on the long term? Like what is, let's take Russia and Ukraine. What does Russia think, and not Russia as a country as a whole, but like the Russian government think they will get from this? If they win, they will be seen as the villains forever. And if they lose, not only will they be humiliated, but they will also have to deal with the consequences of the many war crimes that they've already committed in the process of doing this. And any material gain that they may have from acquiring the territory of Ukraine will be gone before they can wash away the reputation of having done that.
Yeah.
Because today, you think about the things that like Germany did in World War II. You think about the things that Japan did in the Southeast Asia during that period and during the early 20th century. And you like, those things, they still taint the reputation of these countries. And they were reformed, and new people are in power, and they are completely different now. But for decades, they had to deal with the fact that they messed up. And so think about it in the perspective of a parent or a couple fighting. Imagine that they have kids. If they just do that, step on each other, hurt each other's feelings as a coping mechanism to the pain that they are feeling themselves, and then they ruin the kid's life because of that, how are they gonna ever deal with that pain afterwards? And that's something that really haunts me because like my family is very stable. My parents have a great relationship, and I've grown around friends whose parents were divorced.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of environment, you can tell that does something to a child. That there is something lacking. Not exactly like they're not gonna necessarily be worse people because of that, but there is gonna be some element of human kindness and love and relationships that will suffer from that. And he goes in depth in daddy issues because his parents also didn't divorce. He wasn't raised by a single mother or a single father or split between the two. But the way that his father tried to keep him off the streets and the way that his father tried to educate him also generated trauma that he carried for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And didn't even notice until he probably started this therapy session and went into it, and then he realized, oh shit, I have daddy issues.
Yeah.
That's on me.
Yeah.
I have to deal with this. And like he acknowledges that his father was trying his best, but his best was not the right thing that Kendrick needed. And so that is the thing to me, is like the responsibility of the consequences of your actions, and what you do, what you will leave for the future. Those things, they have weight, and the weight of those things needs to be taken into consideration when you deal with your trauma and your pain. Because if you don't, you're just gonna hurt everyone around you. You're just gonna be an asshole to everyone. You're gonna hurt your significant other. You're gonna hurt your children. You're gonna hurt your parents. You're gonna hurt your friends. You're gonna hurt the industry. You're gonna hurt society, the culture. You're gonna get involved into gang wars, or you're gonna become a terrible cop that doesn't go into schools, and you're
Fuck
gonna
me.
just hurt everyone else trying to avoid your own pain.
Yeah.
And that's just the worst thing that you can do. You're just passing on the responsibility of dealing with your bullshit to other people.
Yeah, when you talked about, your parents, having being in a good relationship, and other people who have parents that are divorced and stuff. My wife and I, we're coming up on 20 years married, and overall we have a great relationship. We don't really
Yeah.
argue. It's very healthy and stuff like that. And I'll joke around this and that. And every now and then I'll joke around about, okay, that's it. We're done. It's time for divorce. I'm going to move and this and that. And every now and then, my son, who is a great kid, and he's got a great life, and he's loved and cared for, and all this other stuff. Even when I joke about that, he does not like that at all. At all. It's like I'm sure you've heard the phrase "sacred cow," like the thing that you cannot judge or joke or do anything with, like you cannot touch it, right? It's like that for him. Like our relationship, my wife and I's relationship, is something you can't even joke about. It really bothers him if you do.
Yeah. And recently, I got into a lot of comedy stand-up YouTube because of shorts, because the algorithm feeds me that shit.
Yeah.
I got into a guy, a puppet named Randy Feldface. He's a little purple guy that is very funny, and one of his specials is called Purple Privilege, and in there he talks about, yeah, and he talks about how childhood trauma is so easy to happen, and so easy to get into, and so hard to realize until it's too late to deal
Yeah.
with. You've already done damage. But if people were more mindful of their own trauma, the kids of the future would be less traumatized, and then in consequence their kids would suffer less, and so on and so on. It would be a positive cycle, right? But what happens is, because everyone is so busy all the time trying to deal with life, like his father, when his mother
his
died,
mom
he
dies,
was
yeah.
like, life doesn't wait on the bills, that's just how it is. uh he had to bottle up all that pain with no chaser and just drink it up.
Yep. Yep.
And then he, on accident or subconsciously, passed on that pain to Kendrick, who, in consequence, hurt his wife and the people around him because of those issues. And that little chain of hurting, just goes on forever. And that's the reason why the culture, that's the reason why the environment that we're growing up in right now is so messed up. Because we have this chain of pain and trauma that we refuse to deal with, and rather we spend time judging other people's pain and trauma to avoid dealing with our own. And because of that, we never get better as a group, as a family, as a society, as individuals, as a government, as a country. We just stay stagnant.
Yeah.
So you can take a look to contextualize this in something recent. If you take a look at every school shooter in the past few years, you can tell that they did that because they had something that hurt them, and instead of dealing with that pain, they passed it forward.
Yeah.
And so what you can see clearly is that the lack of self responsibility, the lack of the maturity to deal with pain and trauma and hurtful things that happen to you, just makes you become a villain in someone else's life, even though you don't want to. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to help, but sometimes by helping, you inadvertently creates a worse problem than you would if you let them go through stuff. So, for example, your son, when he hurt his knee, some parents try to bottle up the child and protect him from everything that hurts and any kind of pain. But that just creates someone that when they inevitably face pain in their life, they won't know how to deal with it. And they will either like suffer a lot and go through it 10 times worse than they would, or they will just hurt someone else because of that.
You know, that's it. So this is a great. So Gabe, I'm going to crush your soul right now because we're at 58 minutes. So we're going to get to the end here, and I know you don't want to hear that because we've only just started in your mind. But I want to tell a story, the back end of that story with my son. He got his stitches, you know, and of course the numbing shots did hurt. They hurt a lot, but it was for about 2 minutes, and after everything numbed up and the doctors came in, what was cool was the doctor was a guy and the nurse was a guy. So it was 3 dudes, you know, me and the 2 other guys and him. And all of us were just manning the shit out of like, oh yeah, you're not a man until you get stitches, and talking about all these injuries and war scars and all this other stuff, right? And he goes through the process and he gets his stitches, and we're all just talking about this and that and how badass and tough he is and all, you know, just this typical man bullshit, right? And when we left that clinic, he was so excited because he got his stitches and he did it, and he's going to go tell his friends at school what happened and all this other stuff. And it was just the coolest thing to see him going from being just terrified to almost celebrating it as an accomplishment, something that he overcame and conquered, you know?
Mm-hmm. So that is the perfect bookend because to wrap everything that was set up and how it relates to the overall experience of the album. The album, you've heard the mirror theory, that both records mirror each other.
Yeah,
so
I've heard that.
The opposite ends of each album connect, and the middles and everything.
Right.
And so this album, it is a mirror in more ways than one. It is a mirror in the track list. It is a mirror for Kendrick because he is reflecting metaphorically. He's thinking about his own life, but it is also reflecting his image, as in painting a perfect picture of himself and his real self so that we can all see. But it is also a mirror for us so that we can look into it and go, so he goes through that too. And if he's dealing with it, maybe I should deal with it.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful for the future that this album can bring, because it is such a like get older like wine type of album where the more time you have with it, the more you can appreciate the fine details of everything that is in it. And so he bookends the album with 2 tracks that for me are like some of the best Kendrick has ever done, and not necessarily in a sound or music aspect, but just like the feeling that I get from these 2 ending tracks, Mother I Sober and Mirror, is just incomparable, because Mother I Sober is like the consequence, the close off, the cap to everything that he talked about in the album. So he goes through every little trauma and every little piece of guilt and pain that he has had, and then he goes through all of that in a very sober tone.
Yeah.
Unlike You, he goes through that in a very straightforward tone. He talks about the trauma that his mother had and because of that trauma, she hurt him. So rapping that part of the album, he talks about how the entire community, black the black community in the U.S. is in that cycle of being abused and abusing other people, seeing rape and then raping each other, and then because of that cycle, generating a culture of murder, of self hate, of self loathing, and of the lack of hope for the future. And then he bookends that with the idea that everything is forgiven. You
Yeah.
hurt someone
Yeah.
else, all right. You were hurt, all right, but you're forgiven. And to me, that is so beautiful because as a Christian and as someone who has the idea of forgiveness very deeply ingrained in me, he is just here doing exactly what Jesus would tell him to do, that is to forgive. And he does so in a way that may be even controversial to some because he doesn't just forgive the victims and the people who are guilty, who feel guilty, who carry the load. He forgives the people that caused that pain. He goes to all your abusers. I
Yeah.
forgive you too,
Yep.
and he does that. It's such a powerful statement to do. Of like, I forgive the people that are in pain. I take your pain away, and I forgive the people that caused pain because they are also in pain. And then he ends that off with choosing himself and above all forgiving himself for not being the hero, the savior that everyone put him up to be, and for doing what he needed to do for himself. I'm sorry I could not save your word again. I was too busy. Sorry I could not save the word, my friend.
Yep.
I was too busy building mine again.
Yeah.
And so that process of healing is only complete when he forgives himself. That is the last track. And ironically, by choosing himself first and choosing not to save the world, not to be the prophet, not to be the hero, he might actually do more good for the people than if he tried to save everyone.
I wanna jump in with Run the Jewels and album 2 and Crown because that came out well before Big Steppers did, obviously.
Yeah.
And that chorus of,
Can't pick
can't pick
crown,
up no
holding.
crown when you're holding what's holding you down. And
Yeah.
I don't recall the interview. I don't remember where I heard it or saw it or what. It was on YouTube, obviously, but Kendrick had mentioned something about having a lot of respect for Killer Mike, and Mike was touched by
With the
that.
politics, he goes about there's a line where he says, critics say that they miss when hip hop was rapping. And he goes, motherfucker, if you did, then Killer Mike would be platinum because he has the album Rap Music.
Yeah,
So that there's a wordplay with that, but also because Killer Mike is such a respected rapper, but he didn't sell very much or very well until he got into RTJ.
oh
So
okay,
he's criticizing the critics that say, "Oh, this new melodic shit is not good. I miss when hip hop was rapping." Well, if you did, then Killer Mike would be platinum, but he's not.
yeah.
Well, he wasn't, but he's now because RTJ is such a big phenomenon. But at the time, he wasn't, and that's the line that he did.
I wonder if Crown was inspirational for Kendrick.
It surely was in there somewhat
It
somehow.
has to have been. I honestly, I mean, I'm obviously just dumping a bunch of assumptions on there and my own perception and stuff like that. But if Kendrick is a fan of Killer Mike, he's heard that song. And if he's heard that song specifically had to have resonated with Kendrick. You can't pick up a crown if you're holding what's holding you down. That had to
Yeah.
have hit with him. Had to have. And it's just so cool because Crown, I think, is probably my favorite Kendrick song. And mostly because of who wrote it, when they wrote it, at the time of their career and their life, where it lands in the album, what it means in the album. I mean, so much about it, that song. It has all these layers. It's just, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's really, really cool to me, man.
You can tell that you're really a dad because when the new album came, your first worry was if Kendrick was alright mentally. Dude, like, is he okay? Is he happier now? I
That's
hope he is. I hope he's in a better place. Or like you criticize yourself too much. Like I've never seen someone call Kendrick out for that until your reactions, and that was so interesting to see. Like, yeah, this guy dads.
yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, but I hope you're satisfied with what you got from this because he really is in a better spot mentally right now.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask you this because I said it, and we'll see what you think. Is Kendrick done? No, not now. As in done. As in no more Kendrick albums. I'm not saying features, sure, guest spots, this and that. But is Kendrick done? Does Kendrick make another Kendrick Lamar album?
That's the thing we can't say because if I say yeah he's done, this is his last, and then he comes up with another amazing, fantastic masterpiece, I'm gonna look dumb. But if I say,
Don't worry about looking dumb, man. It's fine. I do it all the time. It's great.
if I say no, no, he's not done, and then he never drops ever again, people are gonna call it on me. Like, yeah, because he's not done, just because you said that. Now he's done. So the thing is, Kendrick is now free. That's the thing. There is an interview where Nina Simone, and I know you like her very much.
I do.
There's an interview with her where she goes like, "To me, freedom is
Yeah.
not being afraid. It's not having fear."
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Your son, once he got rid of that fear, he was free to enjoy the stitches.
Yep.
Kendrick is now at a place in his life where he has no fear of whatever reaction to his stuff is gonna get. He has no fear of letting people down. He has no fear of doing whatever the hell he wants because he knows it doesn't matter. He's not supposed to please everyone. I can't please everybody. I can't even please myself, let alone everybody else. So now that he knows that, he is free. So being free, he can do whatever the hell he wants, and that includes doing another album. That includes only ever doing features from now on. That includes just moving to Africa and living in a hut near the beach and never speaking to anybody else except his own family ever again. He's free. He can do that, and no one will say anything because if we only ever get Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, and Mr. Morale, we still got 5 masterpieces that will never be matched again because they're so unique, because they're so personal, because they are so creative, but also because they are so important to music. And if we do get a new project from Kendrick, it's more Kendrick Lamar, and no one is gonna say no to that.
Yeah.
So like, to me, it doesn't matter if he is or not done. I'm just happy that he is free to do whatever he wants to do, and I will be happy with whatever he chooses next because he's already done so much.
Gabe, that was fucking perfect. Man, that was perfect. Perfect. I love it. I think that's one of the best takes I've ever heard. I think we'll close it with that because if we talk more, we'll just ruin that, Oh man, dude, fantastic talk, Gabe. I know you probably wanted to get into more of it, but we're at an hour 10. Fantastic talk, dude. That ending was perfect. So good, so good. Well done, my friend. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad we got to sit down and talk again. It was fucking great, man.
Because my thoughts, they are free flowing all the time. So to have myself have to force myself to organize my mind to go through something and dig deep into it, it helps me process the album better because obviously it's easier to understand something when you have to explain that to other people. But it also is just helpful to help me clear my mind and have this moment of like taking this thoughts out and putting them into the world. And that's why I love the community as a whole, because even when I'm not on a video like this, when I'm not doing a project, I still have a place where I can just dump a random wall of text, and I know some people are gonna read it and take what I have to say seriously and come back with other responses. And to me, that is invaluable. $2 is literally just too little to express how grateful I am to be able to be there and be present and watch your journey into hip hop. That is only a year younger than my own because I started in 2020. You started in 2021. So while I'm a year ahead of you, I've learned so much already from you because you have such an insightful mind and because of the way you take music so seriously. And so to me, this channel, this community, being a mod, everything has just been freaking awesome.
That's great, man. It warms my heart. It warms my heart to hear that. It really does. I love it. I love it. I don't really have too much else to say. If I try and talk more, I'll probably start crying. You did a good job of putting me like right on the brink there. That was really well said. I appreciate it. So I guess
appreciate it. Yeah. It's kind of nice to hear myself say those things.
Gabe, I thank you so much for coming back. It was a great chat. Great chat. That was fantastic. And
for having.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think we'll talk again. We'll definitely talk again at some point for sure. And
if you do a lot of self promo on your channel.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I have a channel. It's not very big. It only has 50 subscribers, but it is something that I do in my own time that I'm very proud of, where I have the chance to just go off like this. It really dig deep into something. So, as a snippet, for example, I am right now doing a movie review for Avengers Age of Ultron. The damn thing is 16 pages long. And it's part 2 of a 4-part series I'm doing on the 4 Avengers movies. And part 1 is already out on my channel. It's 50 minutes long. And so it's the place where I can just go off and dump my thoughts and have fun and exercise my own ability to like talk about stuff and think. And I would really appreciate it if you guys could just go there, have discussions, hear what I have to say if you're interested, and if not, just leave a comment saying I'm a dumb head or something like that, and I'm gonna be glad to answer no you.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Perfect. I will say this. I remember when we first interacted, you sent me a link to the videos that you had made, and I watched one. I was like, holy shit. This is really, really, really well done. Like, really well done. You can tell lots of time, lots of effort, care had gone into it. Really well done.
When I was in my friend's house editing those videos,
Yeah.
well, my diet was basically pizza and chicken and a lot of energy drinks. So like those are the 3 stones that powered.
Yeah. Your food triangle. Nice.
But that's it. From me, I'm happy with what came out. I'm satisfied, and I would definitely love to do one of these again in a few months when you have another available spot, when something else notable appears or pops up. And it's always a pleasure to just have this talk. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I'm glad we got back together again. That was fun. Okay. Well, everyone that's watching, I hope you enjoyed this a little bit longer than normal. That's totally fine. It was great. Well, I think that was one of the best ones. Honestly, I really enjoyed that one. And everybody watching, thank you for watching, and we'll see y'all again next week.